The flight from Doha to New York was smooth, cutting through clouds like a silver blade. Among the 200 passengers sat 12-year-old Liana Vale, her wide hazel eyes glued to the window, watching the sunset bleed into crimson gold. Her mother, Dr. Amira Vale, dozed beside her, exhausted from a medical conference. In the cockpit, Captain Rainer Holt and his CO pilot joked about turbulence forecasts. Everything was routine until the first alarm blinked red. Oxygen pressure, altitude imbalance. Something was terribly wrong. Within seconds, the CO pilot slumped forward, unconscious. Rainer turned pale as dizziness hit him like a hammer. He react. She turned toward the radio panel mounted just outside the cockpit. The emergency one flight attendants could access. Hands trembling, she pressed the green button.
Hello? I'm on flight 972. Everyone's asleep. My mom's not waking up.
There was a pause, then a man's voice came through. Calm, firm, but urgent. Sweetheart, this is Ground Control Commander Elias Trent. What's your name?
Liana, she stammered. I think the pilot's fainted too.
Silence. Then, okay, Liana, you're very brave. I need you to listen carefully. Do you see a keypad beside the cockpit door? She nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. Yes. Good. The emergency override code is on the panel beside the intercom. Use that to unlock it. Liana scanned the metal surface until she found a small red latch marked EMG code access. Her fingers danced across it nervously. She entered the digits as he dictated, with a soft click. The door slid open. The sight made her gasp. Captain Holt was slumped sideways, oxygen mask dangling. The co-pilot was motionless. Lights blinked across the panels. Red, orange, flashing.
Elias, they're not moving.
Liana, he said softly, I know this is scary, but you have to get into the pilot's seat. Can you do that for me? Her knees were shaking, but she climbed onto the SE. Commander Elias Trent was slumped over the dashboard, pulse faint but alive. Her small voice broke through the mechanical chaos.
Mom, what do I do?
Her mother's voice crackled through the cabin intercom, weak but steady.
Liana, remember the simulator in Grandpa's hangar. You know what to do.
The girl swallowed hard, pulling herself onto the pilot's seat. Her heart pounded louder than the alarms. She took a deep breath, just like her grandfather had taught her when flying his crop duster in the fields of Almeria. Steady hands, clear mind, she whispered. Then suddenly, a sound, a faint click, something under the console moving. Her eyes widened. Wires were cut. Intentionally, a black box blinked red under the co-pilot's seat. Someone did this, she gasped. She quickly reached for the headset, fumbling to connect to ground control. Mayday! This is Flight 302. Pilot's down. This is Liana Trent. I'm 12 years old. Static filled the line. Then a calm voice answered. Liana, this is Tower Control. We hear you. You're doing great. Can you tell us your altitude? Liana squinted at the screen. 30,000 feet and dropping slowly. I can try to keep her steady, she said, gripping the yoke with both hands. The tower operator paused. Good girl. We're with you every second. Just breathe. Behind her, a faint groan. Commander Trent stirred, his eyelids fluttering. Elias, you're alive. He coughed, clutching his head. The system's been tampered with. Autopilot overridden. His gaze fell on the blinking red device. His expression hardened. That's not malfunction. That's sabotage. Liana's lips trembled. Can we fix it? He met her eyes. If we don't, we'll lose control in 6 minutes. The storm outside raged like a living beast, lightning slicing through the clouds as Flight 302 shook violently. Liana's small hands gripped the yoke so hard her knuckles turned white. Commander Elias Trent, still weak, forced himself upright. His breath came in shallow gasps, eyes darting to the blinking red light. Liana, he rasped, that's not just sabotage, it's a timed failsafe. Whoever planted it wanted this plane to disappear. Her pulse raced. Disappear? Why would anyone do that? Elias's jaw tightened. Because one of the passengers downstairs is not who they seem. Another jolt rocked the plane, throwing a coffee cup across the console. The scent of burning wires filled the cockpit. Alarm screamed again. Liana steadied the aircraft, voice trembling. What do I do? Elias pointed to the switchboard. You see the green lever? Pull it halfway, don't engage it fully or we'll lose altitude control. She followed his command. The plane leveled slightly, though its engines coughed and shuddered. Good, Elias said hoarsely. You've got instincts like your grandfather. Her eyes flickered with hope. You knew Grandpa? A faint smile crossed his lips. Knew him? He trained me. I owe him my wings. Before she could reply, a soft beep-beep echoed beneath the control panel, the red light now flashing faster. The countdown had begun. Commander, she whispered, the light. It's speeding up. Elias's eyes went wide. They triggered it remotely. He reached for the black box, tearing open the metal panel with trembling fingers. Inside were 2 colored wires, one blue, one white, both pulsing with light. He looked at Liana. We have 90 seconds, her voice cracked. Which one do we cut? Elias froze. Sweat beaded on his forehead. I don't know. The manual override codes were changed. Then through the static-filled radio, a voice they didn't recognize spoke softly. Don't touch that, Commander, unless you want to bring the plane down faster. The voice was calm, male, confident. Elias grabbed the mic. Who is this? Identify yourself. The man chuckled faintly. Let's just say I'm cleaning up the skies for people who don't belong in them. Liana's heart sank. He's still on the plane. Stay calm, Elias said, scanning the cabin camera feed. We'll find him. But first we keep this jet alive. He turned to Liana. Kid, it's you and me now. No mistakes. You ready? She nodded, wiping tears from her cheeks. Let's fly. The engines roared again as thunder cracked outside, painting the cockpit in flashes of blue and white. Liana pushed forward, holding her breath, guiding the plane through the turbulence like a young warrior facing the storm. While somewhere in the passenger cabin, the saboteur stood among them, watching, waiting. Lightning clawed at the sky as Flight 302 trembled violently. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm building inside. Liana's hands stayed locked on the yoke while Commander Elias, his strength slowly returning, scanned the cabin feed through the small monitor. Every passenger was a blur of fear. Crying children, praying mothers, pale businessmen gripping armrests. But one man stood out, seat 14 degrees Celsius, calm, unmoving, eyes straight ahead even as chaos erupted around him. Elias leaned closer. There. Zoom in. Liana squinted at the flickering screen. The man was young, mid-30s, wearing a gray hoodie and a strange metallic watch. His fingers drummed on the armrest in perfect rhythm. Not random tapping, but code. Commander, he's signaling something, she said. Elias nodded grimly. Morse. That's Morse code. They deciphered the pattern. 30 minutes till silence. Liana's stomach dropped. Silence? He means... The engines, Elias finished. He's planning to shut them down completely. The plane jolted again. Oxygen masks swung from above. Somewhere behind them, a child screamed. Elias unbuckled, his voice hard. I'll go find him. Liana grabbed his sleeve. You can barely stand. He looked at her with fierce eyes. I've flown through wars, kid. A storm and a coward won't stop me now. You just keep her steady. He stumbled out of the cockpit, pulling a small metal baton from his side pocket, a pilot's emergency tool, heavy enough to break glass or bones. As he disappeared down the aisle, Liana's mind raced. The console lights flickered again. The countdown was still active, now at 0217. She grabbed the radio. Ground control, this is Flight 302, requesting immediate emergency clearance. We have a possible intruder on board. Static. Only static. Please, she whispered, someone answer. No one did. Meanwhile in the cabin, Elias moved past trembling passengers, scanning faces. Every step echoed through the metal floor. His eyes locked on the man in 14 degrees Celsius. Still calm, still tapping that silent rhythm. Sir, Elias said, voice steady. You need to come with me. The man looked up slowly, a smirk forming on his lips. Commander Trent, you survived longer than expected. Elias froze. How do you know my name? The man leaned back casually. Because I was hired to make sure Flight 302 never reached Dubai. And because your co-pilot wasn't supposed to be a little girl. Elias's heart pounded. He moved to grab him, but the man pressed his metallic watch. Instantly, alarms screamed in the cockpit. Liana gasped as all 4 engine readings dropped to 0. The plane's nose dipped. Red lights exploded across the dashboard. No, 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 she cried, yanking the yoke back. The plane descended sharply, passengers shrieking as gravity tore at them. Through the headset, the saboteur's voice returned, calm and cruel. "Let's see if the prodigy can fly without wings." Liana's tears blurred her vision, but her voice was steel. "Watch me." She pulled with all her strength, the engines silent, the sky roaring, and the earth rising fast beneath them. The war for Flight 302 had truly begun. The engines were dead. The cabin plunged into an eerie mechanical silence, broken only by the howling wind battering against the fuselage. The lights flickered dimly, casting ghostly shadows on the terrified faces of passengers. Liana's small hands gripped the controls tighter. Sweat trickled down her temple, but her eyes stayed sharp, darting between the altimeter and horizon. The plane was losing altitude fast. Come on," she muttered. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "When all fails, trust the sky, not the machine." She angled the nose slightly up, adjusting flaps manually. The plane's descent slowed just enough to buy a few precious minutes. In the cabin, Commander Elias lunged at the man in 14 degrees Celsius. The saboteur was quicker, sidestepping and striking him in the ribs. Elias stumbled back, gasping. "You're too old for this, Commander," the man sneered. "Let the new world take over." Elias's response was a swing. The emergency baton cracked against the saboteur's shoulder. The man grunted, staggering into a seat, but not before slamming a small remote on his wrist. From the cockpit, a new alarm shrieked. "Manual override denied." Liana slammed the controls. "No!" No response from hydraulics. "He's locked me out!" Elias, hearing the chaos through the open intercom, growled, "Over my dead body!" He lunged again, tackling the man. They crashed against the aisle seats, passengers screaming. A woman tried to shield her baby as the two men fought. Fists, elbows, gritted teeth. The saboteur pulled a blade from his boot. Elias caught his wrist mid-swing, veins bulging as they struggled. The knife glinted under the flickering light. Liana's voice cracked through the intercom. "Commander, the systems are locked. I can't get throttle control. Keep it steady," Elias grunted, forcing the man's hand away inch by inch. "Find a way around it. You're smarter than him." Liana's mind raced. She remembered a training module from her father, an emergency mechanical bypass hidden under the console. Her hands trembled as she reached under, fingers brushing wires and levers until she found a small switch labeled Manual Flow Override. She flipped it. Instantly the plane jolted. The hydraulics whirred faintly back to life. Not full power, but enough. "Yes," she breathed, regripping the controls. In the cabin, Elias finally overpowered the saboteur, slamming him into a seat armrest. The knife clattered to the floor. Elias pinned him down, blood dripping from his own lip. "Who sent you?" he demanded. The man smirked, whispering through clenched teeth. "You'll never land that plane alive." Elias's fist cut the smile off his face. He pressed the intercom button. "Liana, systems back, partial control, but we're still losing altitude, fast. Then we're not done yet." Elias cuffed the saboteur's hands with a seatbelt and sprinted toward the cockpit. The passengers broke into applause as he passed, not out of joy, but desperate hope. He burst through the cockpit door, panting, bruised, bleeding, and froze. Liana was still there, calm, focused, steering the 200-ton steel bird through a sea of lightning. The glow from the dashboard painted her face in gold. Elias exhaled. "By God, you're really doing it." Liana didn't look at him. "We're not safe yet. I need altitude. We're gliding blind." Elias took the co-pilot seat. "Then let's do this together." He grabbed the throttle, she adjusted the flaps. The storm raged harder, rain hammering the windshield. But for the first time, the plane responded like a living thing again, wounded but alive, and together they fought to keep it that way. Thunder cracked so close it felt like the heavens themselves were breaking open. The plane trembled violently, its wings slicing through the heart of the storm like blades of defiance. Liana's voice was low but steady. "Altitude 11,000 and dropping. We'll lose lift under 10. Commander Elias adjusted the rudder pedals manually. The lights flickered again, the faint hum of dying systems barely audible beneath the roar of wind. He glanced at her, the 12-year-old girl who had taken command of death itself. "You remind me of your father," he said quietly. He trained me once, long ago. I didn't even realize. Liana's breath hitched. You knew my father? Elias nodded grimly. Captain Liana Vale, the finest pilot I ever met. He died saving 200 souls, and you just might do the same. Her eyes widened, but she didn't let the emotion shake her grip. Then let's make him proud. Suddenly the comm unit flickered to life. A voice, broken, muffled, cut through the static. This is ground control Dubai. Flight 302, do you copy? You're off radar altitude critical. Liana grabbed the radio. This is Liana Vale. We've lost engines and partial hydraulics. Attempting glide landing. Request emergency strip clearance. The controller's voice cracked. Did you say Liana Vale? As in Captain Liana Vale's daughter? Yes, sir, and I need your help right now. Static. Then a pause. Copy that, Liana. We'll light up runway 3. You've got one chance. Godspeed. Elias smirked faintly. Looks like the whole world just found out who's flying. The storm shifted. The clouds tore open in flashes of white fire, and below, faint city lights glittered through the darkness. But as Liana prepared for descent, the cabin door burst open again. The saboteur, he'd broken free of the seatbelt, cuff, blood streaking down his temple, eyes wild with rage. You're not landing this plane, he shouted, stumbling forward. Elias spun around, shielding Liana. You should have stayed down. The man raised the small remote again, pressing the trigger. But this time, nothing happened. Liana's voice was cold, almost frighteningly calm. You forgot one thing. You disabled the system, but I rewired the manual flow. You can't touch this plane anymore. The man hesitated, then laughed darkly. You think you're saving them? You're landing on an unmarked strip full of fuel tanks, one spark and... Before he could finish, Elias lunged, slamming him against the metal frame. The two crashed into the cockpit door, the knife sliding free again. Liana's voice trembled, but her hands stayed fixed on the yoke. Elias, sit belt, descent critical. The saboteur turned his knife toward her, but Elias caught his arm, the blade inches from her throat. The plane dipped violently as they struggled. At that exact moment, lightning struck the wing. A blinding flash, the cabin roared with light. Alarm screamed. Elias, with one desperate surge, twisted the man's wrist and drove him backward. The saboteur fell, striking the open hatch frame as the pressure door blew. The roar of the storm swallowed his scream as he was sucked into the night sky. The cockpit door slammed shut. Silence followed. Liana's breath came in ragged bursts. Commander? Elias collapsed into the seat beside her, chest heaving. Still here. Let's finish this. Liana's trembling fingers steadied on the throttle. The storm parted slightly ahead. A strip of lights emerging through the rain-soaked darkness. Runway in sight, she whispered. Elias nodded. Then bring her home. The two worked in perfect sync, his voice guiding, her hands unshakable. Below them, Dubai spread like a sea of gold, waiting. Flaps 20, gear down, hold your angle, good girl. And through the storm, the ghost of her father's voice echoed softly. Trust the sky, my little bird. It will never let you fall. The runway lights shimmered below like a golden thread through darkness. Hope carved into the storm. Liana's pulse thundered in her ears, her breath shallow but steady. Altitude 3,000 feet and falling, Elias announced, glancing between the panels. You've got one shot at this, Liana. If you descend too fast... I know, she whispered, tightening her grip on the controls. We break apart. The storm thrashed the aircraft like a beast unwilling to surrender its prey. The left wing dipped, lightning spidering across its length. Liana fought the turbulence with precision far beyond her years, instincts and memory fusing into a kind of graceful defiance. Flaps 30, Elias barked. Flaps 30, she echoed. Her small hand hit the lever. The hydraulic groan filled the cockpit. The plane's nose rose slightly, just enough to catch the air in slow descent. Outside, the windshield wipers screeched against sheets of rain. Visibility was near zero. Elias, I can't see the markers. Then trust your instruments, he replied. That's what your father did. She focused on the altimeter and the faint glowing arc of the runway. The ground rushed closer, alarms blaring. Too fast, Elias muttered. Pull up 2 degrees. Pulling up. The plane shuddered violently, its belly skimming through air thick with rain. In the cabin, people screamed prayers into the darkness. Liana's teeth clenched as she felt the drag. The final resistance before touchdown. Landing gear, Elias called, deployed, throttle, dead manual. Then hold steady. Let her glide. She eased the yoke with both hands, her body trembling from exhaustion. The plane leveled, hovering on the knife edge between life and disaster. Then, impact. The wheels kissed the runway. A massive spray of water shot across both sides. Tires screeched, metal groaned, and the entire fuselage vibrated as if the aircraft itself was screaming. "Reverse thrust!" Elias shouted out of habit, but there was no thrust left. Liana improvised. She used remaining hydraulic pressure to tilt the flaps down, forcing maximum drag. The aircraft slid, until at last it slowed. They came to a full stop halfway down the runway. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Only the hiss of rain and the slow whine of dying engines filled the air. Then the silence broke, passengers crying, cheering, calling her name. Liana sat frozen, her hands still on the yoke. Her reflection trembled in the cockpit glass, lit by flickering instrument panels. Elias leaned back in his seat, exhaling deeply. His voice cracked with awe. "You did it, kid. You actually did it." She turned to him slowly, eyes glistening with disbelief. "Did we just land?" He smiled through blood and exhaustion. "You didn't just land, you commanded the sky." Below them, emergency vehicles were already racing down the strip. The crew on the ground had tears in their eyes as they looked at the girl in the captain's seat, soaked in sweat, shaking but unbroken. Liana reached into her pocket, feeling the small silver charm her father had given her years ago, shaped like a feather. She whispered softly, "For you, Dad." The storm outside finally began to fade. But as the clouds parted, Elias looked at the dark horizon, unease flickering in his tired eyes. "The saboteur said this wasn't about us," he murmured. "Then who was it really for?" Liana turned toward him, her face no longer the face of a child, but of a pilot forged in fire. "Then we'll find out," she said quietly. "And when we do, they'll wish this flight had crashed." The last flash of lightning lit her face. Resolute, fearless, the legend of Flight 302 had just begun. Morning broke over Dubai in streaks of gold and gray. The storm had passed, but the aftermath lingered. Twisted clouds hung like ghosts over the airfield, and the runway still shimmered wet beneath the sun. The once chaotic Flight 302 now sat silent, surrounded by emergency vehicles and camera crews. Reporters were already calling it the miracle at 30,000 feet. Inside the hangar, investigators swarmed the aircraft. But while others celebrated, Commander Elias and Liana sat in a quiet corner, both wrapped in blankets, their faces pale with exhaustion. "Flight control says you're a national hero," Elias said softly, sipping his black coffee. "They're calling you the youngest person to ever land a passenger jet solo." Liana gave a faint, tired smile. "I didn't do it alone." He looked at her. "No, but you were the only one who didn't give up." Their conversation broke when a man in a dark suit approached. Sharp features, cold eyes. "Commander Trent, Miss Vale, I'm Colonel Farouk, Aviation Intelligence." Elias straightened. "Colonel." The man nodded curtly. "We recovered the saboteur's body 30 kilometers out. His ID was fake, but his watch wasn't." He placed the metallic watch on the table. "Burnt, dented, still faintly blinking. Encrypted transmission device," Farouk continued, "linked to a private channel. Coordinates trace back to an abandoned airstrip, one that used to belong to Vale Aviation Group." Liana froze. "My father's company?" Farouk's gaze softened slightly. "Before his death, your father's firm was dismantled for alleged corruption, but someone kept using its network. Someone who wanted revenge against the people who ruined him." Elias frowned. "So the saboteur wasn't targeting the flight, he was sending a message." Farouk nodded grimly. "And it was meant for you, Miss Vale, because of who your father was." Liana's throat tightened. "My father wasn't corrupt. He saved lives. She stopped, tears pricking her eyes. Farouk sighed. "Official records may say one thing, but in this world, truth and power don't always match." Elias's hand came to rest on her shoulder. "What are you saying, Colonel?" Farouk looked directly at them. "I'm saying whoever orchestrated this isn't done, and the only person who can uncover it is sitting right here." Liana's hands clenched around her blanket. Her mind replayed the saboteur's words. "You weren't supposed to be here. Then I'm going to finish what my father started," she whispered. Elias studied her face. Fierce, burning with purpose. "You know this won't be easy. Whoever's behind this has money, power, and reach." "I don't care," she said, her voice trembling with conviction. "They tried to bury my father's name. They tried to kill me. But I'm still flying." Farouk slid a sealed folder across the table. "Inside are flight logs, hidden correspondence, and something else your father left encrypted. We believe he knew this day might come." Liana hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a small flash drive engraved with one word, feather. Elias recognized it immediately. "That's what your father used to call you." Liana looked down at the charm still in her hand, the small silver feather she'd clutched in the cockpit. She exhaled shakily. "Then he left me a trail." Farouk turned to leave. "Be careful, Miss Vale. Whoever wanted you dead won't stop now." When the door shut, silence filled the hangar again. Liana turned to Elias. "Commander, will you help me?" He smiled faintly. "Kid, after what you just pulled off, I'd follow you anywhere." The two of them stood, the sunlight cutting across the hangar floor, glinting off the old jet that had almost become their tomb. But this was no ending. This was a beginning, the birth of something larger than both of them, and somewhere deep in the metallic core of that flight recorder, the faint echo of Captain Liana Vale's last message still waited to be unlocked. The investigation stretched on for weeks. Reports, interviews, endless questions. But beneath the noise, one quiet truth began to rise like sunlight after storm clouds. When the encrypted drive was finally unlocked, it revealed a single video file, dated 5 years ago. On the screen, a man appeared, graying hair, warm eyes, and a face full of both pride and sorrow. "Captain Liana Vale, if you're watching this, feather," he said softly, "then I'm gone, and that means the skies have turned against what we stood for." He paused, glancing at something off-screen. "They wanted to use aviation not for saving lives, but for power, control, money. I refused, and they buried me for it. But you, my little bird, you were born to rise above them all." His voice cracked. "When the time comes, don't fly to escape the storm. Fly through it. That's where you'll find your strength." The video ended. Liana sat frozen, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Elias rested a hand on her shoulder, eyes glistening. Her father had never been corrupt, he had been silenced, and she had just finished the flight he couldn't. That day, Liana Vale didn't just save a plane, she reclaimed a legacy. Weeks later, the world hailed her as a hero, aviation schools invited her to speak, governments honored her. But what stayed with her most wasn't the applause. It was the faces of the passengers who hugged her, the mechanic who cried saying, "You brought us home." She often visited her father's memorial, a small plaque near the old runway where he once flew. She'd stand there at sunset, the sky painted in orange and violet, whispering softly, "I flew through the storm, Papa, just like you said." And somewhere, in the whispering wind above the runway, it always felt like he answered back, "Sometimes, the greatest storms in life aren't the ones outside, they're the ones raging within us. Fear, doubt, pain, they try to bring us down. But when you choose to rise anyway, when you face the chaos instead of running from it, that's when wings are truly born." Heroes aren't made in calm skies. They're forged in turbulence, shaped by every moment they almost gave up but didn't. Liana Vale taught the world a lesson that day. That courage doesn't depend on age, status, or experience. It depends on heart. Every one of us has a cockpit moment. When everything goes dark, when everyone else blacks out, and the controls are in our hands alone. What matters then isn't the fear we feel, but the choice we make to fly through the storm, to believe when logic says there's no way, to rise when the world expects us to fall, because life will always throw turbulence your way. People will doubt you, systems will try to break you. But when you hold your own controls and whisper, "I can do this," you rewrite your story. Remember, the sky doesn't belong to those who never fall. It belongs to those who fall, rise, and still choose to fly.